As a child, I grew up hearing a lot of preaching. I sort of come from a family of ministers. The real question in my home, though, was which of the three sons was going to be the minister. And none of them are. It was the only daughter. For then you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Truly, I tell you, they have already received their reward. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I didn't hear a woman preach for the first time until I actually went to seminary myself. And yet there was always this tug toward preaching. I loved that it was rooted in the scriptures and it told the story of God and God's ways with God's people. I loved that it had the power to change people's lives. And I loved the creativity of preaching. And when I wrote my first sermon, I thought, I wanted to do this all my life, but nobody really gave me permission to until now. I started teaching a course called Women's Ways of Preaching a number of years ago because I wanted to empower women for ministry. We start out that course with history, looking at some of the women like Jarena Lee and Phoebe Palmer who preached back in the 18th and 19th century before ordination was a possibility in their church, but they felt this call of the Spirit to preach. So part of it is lifting up that history or herstory, but a part of it is recognizing that women bring to the pulpit a whole realm of difference and experience than men bring. I hear women preach on rape and domestic violence and a number of other issues that I have never heard a man address from the pulpit because it's not been as much a part of his life experience. And it doesn't mean that there's one woman's way to preach, but it does mean that that whole bringing of experience into conversation with text and with women in our congregations and their life experiences changes the way we preach. I'm currently teaching a course called Prophetic Preaching, and we really focus in that course on social justice issues in society, such as violence against African Americans and a host of other things related to poverty and economic justice and racism and the environment. We all know that there are enormous problems we're facing and enormous challenges in the world today. But is there any vision for another way to live, any vision of a new reality? And part of what I find enormously hopeful about preaching is that it paints this vision of God's reality. I mean, if we read the prophets in the Hebrew scriptures, they don't just end with condemning people for the way they're living now. They end with painting a vision of a new reality where the wolf and the lamb are going to lie down together. This whole vision of a peaceable kingdom that draws my heart toward it and that I think draws many people's heart toward it. And then part of the role of the preacher is not only to paint that vision, but to say maybe these are some baby steps we can take in living toward that new reality here and now, given the mess we're in. I love our students. And people often ask me, well, what makes them different than other students you taught? I wax on and on about how creative they are. And let me tell you, in preaching, that makes a big difference. Sermons have to appeal to more than the head. They have to get to the heart and the spirit and the soul and the emotions and the will. And I find enormous creativity in our students. I'm frankly positively inspired by what they do. I often tell people I sit at the best place here. This is what keeps me coming to work every day. I get to hear our students' sermons.